You must love podcasts if you're listening to this. Do you want to start your own one or you already have one? Then follow Smarter Podcasting to get expert advice from me, Niall Mackay, the podcast guy. Since 2019, we've worked with over 40 podcasters, produced over 700 episodes, and helped many podcasts get to the top of the Apple Podcast charts. And right now, I'm offering you a professional edit for just $27. Click the link in the show notes. If your game is to reach as many people as you can, establish your brand authority, establish who you are, your leadership in the niche, short form content is the way to go. Welcome to another episode of Smarter Podcasting with me, your host, Niall Mackay, the podcast guy. I started my first podcast in 2019 just as a hobby for some fun because I was bored one day and I loved podcasts. That podcast made it into the top 10% of podcasts in the world, was well known around Vietnam, and it led to a career in podcasting. And since I lost my job because of the pandemic, I now run 7 Million Bikes podcast, and we've made over 50 podcasts, produced over 700 episodes, and helped many podcasts get to the top of the Apple Podcast charts. So in this podcast, I want to share with you what I've learned along the road, and I'm going to interview expert guests as well to share some of our top tips and tricks to help you make the best podcast possible. If you do want to save the time and frustration of making your own podcast, then obviously get in touch with me. We can have a chat and I can explain to you how 7 Million Bikes podcast can take away that frustration and save you a lot of time by doing some of that work for you. Now, in this episode today, I don't have a guest. I'm going to do an extra special solo episode. So you've just got me today. I haven't done one of these in a while. And I wanted to bring something to you that actually is really, really important. And that is, should your podcast be on YouTube? Now, I didn't fully understand what that meant until recently. So I'm going to share with you today how to get your podcast on YouTube, what it means, and do you have to do a video podcast? All right, let's get into it. So for the longest time, I did not do YouTube. When I started in 2019, podcasts on YouTube wasn't even a thing, and I was audio only, and I was like an old curmudgeon who stuck to the belief that podcasts were audio only. They had to have an RSS feed, and if you had a YouTube video, it wasn't a podcast. Now, I've changed my stance slightly, but not completely. So one of the things that still sets me off is when somebody only has a YouTube channel and they call it a podcast. Now, I guess that is just the way things are in the world. You can have an interview show and it's on YouTube and you're going to call it a podcast. Over the years, it's now changed to any interview format is suddenly called a podcast. I would disagree. I would say whether you have an RSS feed or not, which you would, you have to be on at least Spotify and Apple Podcasts, or on at least one of them, and probably one of the other 30 directories that are available as well. For me, that's really frustrating when people call anything a podcast, and I've dealt with that professionally as well. I've worked with some businesses who've told me they want to make a podcast, and then it became really clear what they just meant was a video. They want to make a video. They would say to me things like, "Oh, we're going to make a podcast today," and I was confused because I made the podcast, and I was like, "Oh, you're making a podcast today? Can you tell me a bit more about it?" And it was basically they were just making a promo video. So there's a lot of confusion out there of what a podcast exactly is. It's definitely not just a video. The other one that really frustrates me, I saw this as well, a company post on Facebook that I had talked to about making a podcast for them. And they suddenly posted about a week later saying that they were putting out a podcast. So again, I was a bit surprised thinking, oh, well, I was hoping to be making podcasts for them. That's surprising. They're putting one out already. And then I looked and it was purely just a webinar that they were doing. Really interesting, really valuable. Not a podcast at all. So that's kind of where I've come from, but I have changed. So I restarted my main show, which is a Vietnam podcast. That's how I got into podcasting. I took a long break to focus on Smarter Podcasting and to focus on 7 Million Bikes podcast. So I took a long break, and eventually when I noticed lots of people were still listening, and my wife kept pestering me because she loves it. She's like, "When are you going to do more episodes?" Eventually, I made the decision, okay, I'm going to bring back a Vietnam podcast, but I'm going to do it even better than I did before. So I have more microphones now, I have more knowledge, I have a better setup, For a short time, I even had a studio, but we had to give that up. So I'm back to recording at home. But even then, the setup, the equipment is so much better. And one of the biggest differences, cut that bit, I was also going to restart. I was going to look for sponsors to try and get a little bit of money for the podcast to support what I'm doing. And thankfully, I've been able to secure 2 sponsors for that podcast. It's not a lot, but it's been something. And I've secured my biggest sponsorship deal ever that's going to start in January for that podcast as well. I restarted my Patreon to not much success yet, but it's restarted and I'm looking to build on that as well. So I said, if I'm going to restart a Vietnam podcast, I'm going to do it properly. And I think I have. But the biggest change I made was using video, and not just video, good quality video. So in the past, especially during the pandemic, we couldn't leave the house. I was doing video interviews and I would use that video, put it on YouTube. It was a crap, a crap webcam. So this quality was awful. I don't even think I had a good microphone back then. I was using a $5 headset. I didn't really spend much time on the thumbnail, the title. I just put it on YouTube and it lived there. And of course, it did garbage. So part of restarting a Vietnam podcast was I'm going to try and do YouTube properly, kind of. So not at first. At first, I'm still audio only, and this was only 6 months ago. But over the last 6 months and longer, I've started to see the benefit of YouTube. And one of the biggest benefits of doing video, which you will hear again and again, and it is so true, for me, it's not the actual episode itself. Some of the episodes do get more views on YouTube than the audio, but you look at the engagement and it's about 5%. And you think about how you consume YouTube videos. I know when I watch one, I've come across a new channel, I think it's really interesting. I never watch a whole episode. I literally just sit there and skip through it to see what they talk about, where they go, what they do. I'm one of those people that are literally consuming about 2 minutes of a 20-minute episode. So the thing I've realized is it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing if anyone consumes only 20%, 5% of your content on YouTube. You do want people to consume it for longer, but it is a completely different medium to audio. Now on audio, I've seen a couple of stats. The one I always use is 80% of people who start your podcast will finish it. And then the other one I just heard recently from Harry Morton at Lower Street Media is on average, people will consume 67% of your podcast. So whichever one of those stats you can take, because they both kind of mean different things, but whichever one you take, it means that people consume your content. And again, think about how you consume a podcast. I know the way I do it. I get to the gym, I put it on. I'm going to listen to a full episode, maybe 2 or 3, once I've walked Biscuit, taken the dog out, made breakfast. When I'm on my bike, driving somewhere, I have my headphones in. Again, I'm listening to a full episode. I've chosen podcasts that I want to consume. So just remember, once you have a listener, especially for audio, they are going to binge your content. They're going to listen to a lot of it. YouTube is completely different. So you do need to manage your expectations. Now, as I've teased already, the best thing about creating video is that you can create that short form content that you can repurpose and reuse on many platforms. So you can post it on Instagram, Facebook, Meta, if you want to call it, if you want to lump them in together. You can do TikTok, and most importantly, you can do YouTube Shorts as well. So I'm going to explain in this video how to get your podcast on YouTube and the difference it makes doing those YouTube Shorts. Now, my channels are not massive. They're not huge. I'm not one of the biggest channels in the world. But as I mentioned at the beginning, I am in the top 10% of podcasts in the world. And you can check out previous episodes to find out what exactly that means and what downloads are good. But if you're getting over 50 downloads per week, you're already in the top 50% of podcasts in the world. So as a podcaster, don't give yourself too much of a hard time. Don't worry too much about the numbers. Remember, do podcasting for the love of it. And it is one of those mediums you probably don't get to see the difference it makes in people's lives until that odd time you meet a listener or somebody contacts you and you're like, oh my God, this podcast actually is listened to by people. So don't worry if your podcast is not getting millions and millions of views. But what I'm going to show you here today is how to get on YouTube, the difference it makes to your podcast, and how it's going to help more and more people find your podcast. So I've shared with you why YouTube is important. Let's now look at how you get your podcast on there. So we're going to now look at a few different things, and I'm sharing my screen with you. Now, just to quickly reiterate why it is so important to have your podcast on YouTube. I just found this article last week called How YouTube Ate Podcasting by the Intelligencer. which is part of the New York Magazine. Now, as you can see here, this is what blew my mind away. YouTube, typically known as the go-to platform for video content, has risen to be the most popular service used for podcast listening in the US. That blew my mind. To me, YouTube is video only. People are not listening to podcasts on there. But I had to think about it, and I thought about how people consume YouTube. Not everyone is watching it for video. I spoke to somebody last week who said that they can't actually watch or they can't actually listen to Spotify in work. I guess it's blocked, or Apple Podcasts, but YouTube is available. So they will listen to podcasts on YouTube while at work. So I forgot about all those kinds of people who put on YouTube and they put it on in the background and they can actually listen to it. They might not be consuming the video part of it, even if it has a video. So a lot of people are listening to it. But the biggest problem for me, why I actually haven't made the most of YouTube until this very week, is because when I added my podcast to YouTube through the RSS feed, which they brought in just recently, about the same time they got rid of Google Podcasts, it added all my episodes with a static image. And immediately I was thinking, nobody's going to watch that. Why would I put it on YouTube when it's a static image? YouTube is a video platform. People are going there to watch stuff. They're never going to consume my podcast if it's just a static image. And I don't have the time or the energy to change that, to add a waveform. And I've seen in the past it makes very little difference as well. So when I first connected my RSS feed to YouTube, there was an option to choose it as add everything private only. So all my episodes sat there. Most of them had a video episode with them as well. So the video episode got views, got engagement, but the audio just sat there in private and nobody saw it. But when I had this realization just this week that it doesn't actually matter that there's not a video component, I thought I'm going to change them all. So I went through all of my past episodes that were on YouTube. Thankfully, it didn't take that long to change them, and I changed them all to public. And I'm going to show you, as I mentioned, sorry, I got sidetracked. I'm going to show you how to add your podcast to YouTube and then what to do with it once it's on there. Now, I'm not an expert on YouTube. There are many, many people who are experts on YouTube. It's something I'm having to learn. I pride myself in being a podcast expert. I'm now having to become a bit of a YouTube expert as well. And I think I'm getting better at it. But if you have any comments or advice, then please let me know in the comments of this video that you may be watching, because this is going to be on YouTube. Or if you're listening to it, then send me an email, neil@7millionbikes.com. Go to the fan mail, go to the notes. There's so many different ways that you can get in touch with me. So do that. So now we know that YouTube is one of the biggest platforms in the world to consume podcasts. How do you get your podcast on there? So it's pretty simple. I'm going to show you my Buzzsprout. Okay, so I use Buzzsprout. I always have. I think they're the best. I'm maybe a bit biased because I've used them for so long. I think they're great though, really easy to use. They do everything you need, and I guess I'm used to it. So you've got your homepage here, and then you can see a whole bunch of other podcasts that I work on as well, because I recommend everyone to use Buzzsprout. And then you navigate from here to directories. Now it's going to show you all the different directories. And if you're new to podcasting, you might be getting confused. There is a lot of jargon. Directories are simply, as you can see, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, all the different ways that you listen to and consume podcasts. Buzzsprout is my host website. There's Captivate, there's Spotify for podcasters. I think that's now just been called Spotify for creators. There's Acast, there's so many, I can't even name them all, but these are all host websites that you upload your episodes to, and then they will distribute it to all these different directories. When I first started podcasting in 2019, which seems like such a long time ago now, this actually wasn't really a thing, or it was just new. When I first started, you can still do this, but you had to go to each one of these directories individually. So I started researching, how do I get my podcast out to the world? And you had to go to Apple Podcasts, whatever the website was back then, write an application or fill in an application. You had to go to Spotify. You had to go to each one of these individually and put in, I guess, post in your RSS feed, something like that, to get on there. Now it's so much easier. You just choose your host and then they will help you get onto all the directories. But that is a little bit of a manual job to it. So you can see here, I've already done all of these, but we're going to concentrate on YouTube today, which, as you can see, I'm already listed. So Buzzsprout, I don't know about other websites, but Buzzsprout makes it super, super simple to be able to get onto these directories and these platforms. So the biggest thing though is look at step one right away. Understand how YouTube is different than other platforms. And it's really, really important that you understand this. So number one, YouTube makes a copy of your episodes when they are published. Number two, changes made in Buzzsprout do not auto-update in YouTube. And plays from YouTube are not included in your Buzzsprout stats. And you can see this here. If we look at my stats, and some of you might be embarrassed at them thinking, oh, he's rubbish. He has rubbish stats. Other people might be looking at them going, oh my God, that's amazing. Whatever one you are, these are my stats and I don't mind showing you. So you can see where people listen to my podcast mostly. We're going to look at what apps people use to listen, which as you can see here. So Apple Podcasts is number one for me for whatever reason. Spotify is number two, Overcast. So you go through all of these. One thing you'll be noticing by now as we look at this list is YouTube isn't on there, which is exactly what it told us, right? So you have to get your stats on YouTube. So you just have to remember it's a little bit different. All of those stats that I just showed you, when you share your RSS feed with all these different directories, it's all pulled together on Buzzsprout. So you can see how many total listens you have. You can go into Apple Podcasts, you can go into Spotify and check how many listens you've had on that platform specifically. It's just another step, but you do need to realize it's really important that your stats for YouTube don't show on your host website and they're not auto-updated. So what this means is right now, if I change anything in my episode list, which we can see here, if I change the name, the number, the picture, it's then going to change it on all of these directories at the same time. Once you connect to YouTube, that doesn't happen. You've basically now handed over your podcast to YouTube and any changes will happen on there. So I just fiddled about with this yesterday. I changed something on my directory here and it doesn't change on YouTube. You have to go in and change that manually. So that's a really important one, number one. Let's look at this list again. So number two, add an email or token to your RSS feed. You also have to make sure that you add an email. So I added this just a couple of days ago, as it says, add to my feed for 48 hours, do this. That's really important because when I first tried to add it to YouTube, it came up denied because I didn't have a valid email address. I'm not 100% sure why they have to do that, just to maybe make sure that you're a real person. They don't send you a code or a token, if I can remember. So I don't know why they do it, but you got to add your email. So do that. Now, this is your RSS feed. It's going to be the same one that you have all the time. If I can find my RSS feed. There you go. So you hear 316502.rss. So it's the same one as you always have. So let's go back. So it gives you your RSS feed. You've got to copy this. Then you've got to go to your YouTube studio, which it gives you a link, thankfully. So we'll go to the YouTube studio, which I should have up already. So you can see here's my studio for my content. Some people will know exactly what this is like. Some people will be like, yeah, this is easy. I know how to do this. Other people might never have seen this before. I don't know which one applies to you, but this is what your dashboard looks like on the YouTube studio. Then it goes up to create. Then importantly, you're not going to upload a video. You're going to go new podcast. Now you can create a new one, select an existing playlist as a podcast. We'll get into that later, or submit an RSS feed. And it tells you how it works. So for each episode in the RSS feed, YouTube will create a static image video and we can see an example. Well, we're going to watch an ad first. So it says that for each episode in the RSS feed, YouTube will create a static image video and it gives you an example. So it means it's going to look like this. I wanted to share with you about one of my favorite affiliate partners, and that is Fiverr. I've been using Fiverr for years for everything from ordering YouTube thumbnails to keyword research, writing podcast articles, even to Canva designs and thumbnails and more. So whether you're a budding entrepreneur, a podcaster, or anyone in between, Fiverr has got you covered. It really is the go-to platform if you want to find freelancers offering a massive range of services to help you on any project. Maybe you need a stunning new logo or just a short animation, whatever you need, you can find it on Fiverr. What I love the most is how easy Fiverr makes it to connect with talented freelancers from around the world, all at prices that will fit whatever your budget is. Plus, with Fiverr's secure payment system, you can trust that your transactions are safe and secure. No dodgy people you meet on Facebook groups that disappear with your money and never give you what you want. What, that's only happened to me? As an affiliate partner, I will get a small commission if you use the link and at no extra cost to you. As an affiliate partner, I will get a small commission if you click my link and you buy something, all at no extra cost to you. And best of all, you will be directly supporting the making of this podcast that you're listening to for free, but it is not free to make. So why wait? Head over to somewhere that you've probably never been before. It's called the show notes. So whatever app you're listening in, if it's Spotify or Apple Podcasts or anything at all, head to the show notes, click on my special link, and then you can browse thousands of gigs ready to help you with your next project. So The Daily, one of the biggest podcasts in the world. And this is what mine looks like as well. They're just a static image. By default, any changes made to an episode's title, description, or publish date will be updated on YouTube. You can change the settings on the video details page. So maybe I got that wrong then. It does say auto update. Maybe it updates eventually. But by default, any change. See, I don't know if this means if you change it on the RSS feed, it's going to change it in YouTube. I do need to do some more work on that. Or it means you just have to change it on YouTube. And they can remove things in your podcast to make it more acceptable for YouTube. So you go through this. I'm not going to add it because I don't think it will even let me because I've already done it. Yeah, so an existing podcast is already done. So you go through a few steps to get your podcast visible. And Buzzsprout, as I said, is a great website. It shows you step by step exactly what you need to do. So follow these steps. And then what you want to do is then give your YouTube podcast website playlist address into Buzzsprout or Captivate, whichever one you're using. So that's how you do it. That's how you get your podcast up there. Now I'm going to show you what it looks like. So one of the problems that I've noticed is when you connect your podcast to YouTube, just like I showed you, all of these have images. You can't actually see them here, but they have images and it will pull through these images into YouTube. And it doesn't fit this format. So this is a very specific format. It's 9:16, I think, if I can remember off the top of my head. And you can see here with these episodes, they had an image attached to them or something, but it hasn't brought through the thumbnail. And then there we go, perfect example. So I haven't changed these yet. So this brings through the square thumbnail that you need for podcasting, and it doesn't fit YouTube. It also brings through the title, which again, it's something that I'm learning that you need to do really specific titles on YouTube. It's not the same as podcasting. And you can see here, they love these words like shocking, truth, honest review, all in capital letters. So it's a little bit different. So what I did yesterday was I went through my channel and I added a thumbnail, which I knew got a score of 100 because I used vidIQ, which you can see up here. And then I changed all the titles as well. But I felt really bad because that meant there was going to be 2 episodes for every episode. There was going to be a video and an audio. So there was 2 things in my mind I could have done. I could have altered the thumbnail, put audio across the thumbnail. That would have probably brought the score down, made it less appealing. It also would have taken me more time and I didn't have more time to do that. So I just added the word audio at the end of it, which also brought the score down of the title slightly. But I was like, I don't need to have it perfect. So as you can see here, this is the audio, and this has just come through yesterday. It's a boring, static image. Nothing changes. This is the thumbnail from the host website. This is on every directory as well. So you can see here, this is what's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, everything like this, and it's been brought through. Now, as I said, I'll show you my stats. I don't care. This episode in one day has already had 132 listens. That's really good. It's probably going to get to 300 within the month. Again, these stats are great. And you think about 80% of people consume all of your content. That's unbelievable. Now we jump to YouTube. This has only just come out yesterday. You can see the date, 49 views one day ago. It's already had 49 views. So when you compare that to 132, it's about 1/3 of the views compared to the audio. That is incredible, right? You're like, wow, so I'm getting more views. But the difference you need to understand is if we look at the analytics, how do I do that? Analytics right here. I'm going to guess it's going to be about 5%. So it's got 51 views, average view duration, 57 seconds, only 2.6%. Now that's pretty bad, but that's a static image. And at the end of the day, 51 more people have consumed your content now that I didn't have on there yesterday because they were all private. Now we can see here the video has actually only had 49 views. We'll go to the video here. But it's much more engaging, much more interesting. And I haven't checked these stats yet, but I would hope that the engagement is higher, but let's check it out. Okay, so 5 times higher. Thank goodness. I was worried there it was going to be wrong. So instead of just 57 seconds or 2.6% average view, this now has 10.2% and 3 minutes 27. It's still terrible, but remember, this is all about getting eyes on your podcast. So I'm happy with that. It's not great. I would love it to be in the thousands. Hopefully we'll get there, and I'm working on that with the thumbnails and with the titles as well. So that's why you need to get your podcast on YouTube, and that's how people are going to consume it. And if we just go through some of these, like this one's had 20 views already. It's just a piece of extra nonsense content that got pulled through from my RSS feed. It's been published on the 25th, which was yesterday, only because that's when I made it public. But actually this episode was made years ago. And if we just look down, so this one, audio only, 7 views. Pretty sure this one is audio only, 2 views. Already got a comment as well. Let's see, maybe it's a bad comment. Oh, it's a thank you. So tell him you're welcome. This is something, again, that doesn't really happen on podcasts. Spotify you can, Apple Podcasts you can. You don't get as many comments. Since I started posting on YouTube, I've had so many comments. It's really, really cool. Sorry, I just want to look at a couple other. These only 2 versus 25. But again, you're starting to get more and more views. Now, the other way you can do it is create a playlist and then tag that as a podcast, and then that will get put into, and then that will also get put into YouTube Music, which is another big thing I realized is completely different. There is an app called YouTube Music. I've never used it before, but they've added podcasts onto there as well. So it's similar to like Apple Music or Spotify. You can pay a subscription fee and then you get access to all the music in the world and all the podcasts as well. But the biggest difference between YouTube and YouTube Music is that when you're watching YouTube on your phone, unless you have the YouTube Premium service, as soon as you close your phone, YouTube will stop playing and you can't listen to it, which is a barrier to using YouTube as a podcasting app. But on YouTube Music, once you get your podcast on there, you can close your phone, close the screen, and you can continue to listen. So that's another massive benefit of listing a playlist and all your episodes that you want to list as a podcast. So you can be on YouTube Music as well. So I mentioned in the beginning, one of the best things about doing video is being able to create short form content. Now I've done that in the past with audio only. I've read about, create audiograms. You know, we've had moving images, we've had the waveform, we've had the words on the screen. They do absolute garbage. They get almost no views. And again, think about your own viewing habits when you're scrolling through short form videos, whether it's Reels, whether it's TikToks. You come across a static image with just words, you're like, meh, skip on. You want to catch people's attention, and with the short form content, it's all about the first 5 seconds. You want to grab people's attention. And this is what gets me really excited, and I've shared this information with a lot of people. Because I know in the beginning, we all want people to consume our podcast, mostly the audio. If you're like me, you've created this audio podcast and you want to just grow your numbers from there. What I'm now telling you is if you look at your numbers on YouTube, you're going to have a separate platform and you're reaching more people, which at the end of the day, that's what we all want when we create a podcast, right? If you want to take it to the next step, you've got to create that short form content. So my numbers on YouTube are absolute garbage right now. I don't get many views on my videos. I'm working on that, and it's hopefully going to increase and get better and better over the next year and beyond. But the short form content is doing really well. And I always like to tell people, think about people knowing you and your brand. I know people who've talked to me and they said, I saw your new episode came out. It's really good. That's awesome. blah, blah, blah. And I'll be like, oh, did you watch the full episode or just like the short video? And they'll be like, oh, just the short video. Yeah, no, I don't watch the full episodes or don't listen to the full episodes. That's fine. That's amazing. They know who you are. They know what you're talking about. They know your niche. They know your expertise, all because they see all these little short form videos. And actually, the people that are going to consume your short form videos are probably 100 to 1,000 times more than the people who actually consume your content. So at the end of the day, if your game is to reach as many people as you can, establish your brand authority, establish who you are, your leadership in the niche, then short form content is the way to go. So let me show you some examples. And again, I hope they're good. This is the best one. So we look at Matt here. Let me show you the episode. So let's have a look at the short form content. So some of them are not yet published. Some of them have just been published. Let's look at this one though. So this is from my episode I did recently with Jason Pham, 9,673. Let's look at the episode. So we got the audio only. That's only just been published yesterday. It's 2. The video itself has only had 25 views. And then let's have a look at the analytics. And this is a great video as well. I really enjoyed making this. We went to his bar. We had a cocktail together. It was great. Wow. Okay. So this one's done really well. Average view 15%. And the average person views it for 9 minutes, 49 seconds. And that's really good to hear because I didn't realize it was as big as that. But this is one of my favorite episodes that we've done. So you can see here, we did an episode, we did part of it. He actually made me a cocktail and showed me how to make it. So this is actually really good. It doesn't tell you the retention rate at the bottom, but on other videos, it will tell you, and this is what blows my mind as well. YouTube tells you that if more than 50% of people are consuming that video after just 30 seconds, that's higher than typical. Think about what that means. YouTube is telling you that more often than not, more than 50% of people have already skipped that video and gone to another one within the first 30 seconds. So everything we do for all our videos, we focus on that first 30 seconds. As you can see there, we try and make it catchy, we make it dynamic, we make it controversial or engaging so that we can get past that 30 seconds. And thankfully, when we look at most of our stats and our analytics, that is one of the things that we do really, really well. Most of our videos, people will go past the 30 seconds. On YouTube, the engagement's going to be different. If you can get to 40%, then you're doing really well. As I said, on podcasts, you're looking about between 70 and 80%. So you just have to realize it's different. But I showed you this video, good engagement, only 25 views. Then we look at the shorts, which we made several of. This one, 9,000, this one, 400. So let's look at this short here. So let's have a look at this one. So as you can see, the difference is absolutely massive when you do that short form content. And let me just show you one more. I made a video because I recently did an episode about what it was like living as an American in Vietnam, because YouTube gave me that title. It told me this is something that would do quite well. So I interviewed my wife, who's American. We live in Vietnam. And part of that conversation, I brought up the movie A Fish Called Wanda. I don't know if you've seen it. If you haven't, it's an amazing movie from like the 90s. And because of that, it spurred me on to then make a reel with The Fish Called Wanda about exactly what I was talking about. And so that reel is the first ever short form video I've made that's gone really, really viral. You can see here 273,893 people have watched this, 73 comments, 2,854 likes, and 94.2%. Now, I'm not even in this video, to be honest, but I did get a lot of subscribers from it. It was a massive, massive boost to my channel. You can see here 239 new subscribers from this one video. So you also have to remember, even though some of these stats are rubbish, 447, 36, it doesn't matter. It's all about making that one video viral and doing that again and again, repeatedly, consistently. Because at the end of the day, think about the hot tour girl. She had one 30-second viral moment. She had one 30-second viral moment, and it has absolutely changed her life. So this is just another example of why YouTube is so amazing and why you need to get your podcast on there, whether you do video or not. I would suggest that you do video, and it does take more time, it does cost more money, and it is more difficult. So again, if you want help with that, get in touch with me. We can help you with that. But one of my biggest mantras in life is almost just taken from Nike. It's just do it. Just get started. Don't worry about being perfect the first time. Just get started and continually get better. And I'm still not amazing. I'm still working on getting better all the time. But if you look at this video that we just did, I think the quality is pretty good now. And this is just made at home in my front room, recording on an iPhone in 4K. We have the good microphones. We have the good setup. Let me show you what my first ever video looked like, because it's quite embarrassing. This is a good example as well. You can see here that it's pulled through all these episodes, which I haven't updated the thumbnail yet. This is the artwork from the audio episode, which is not great for YouTube, and the titles are not great either, but I am going to go through them and make them better. So that is a job for me to do. But let me find my first proper video that I did. So this was one of my favorite episodes, and it's gotten not too bad, 188 views, done 3 years ago. So this was when I first started doing video. As you can see, I was using a $5 headset. Quality's pretty bad. I don't even think I can turn the quality up. I think it is literally, it's already at the highest quality. I was recording on just a laptop webcam. She's recording on similar as well. So the quality was really, really bad. This is how I started. And then this is how I've ended up right now. So it has completely changed. So my biggest piece of advice would be just get started. So before we finish, thank you very much. If you have any questions, let me know. I know I've rambled a lot. This is completely unscripted. I wanted it to be as natural as possible. I think I've covered everything that you need to know. If you have any questions, then please reach out to me on the YouTube comments or neil@7millionbikes.com. And to finish, I'm going to show you my reel that went viral and has so far had nearly 300,000 views and helped me get 289 subscribers from one of my favorite movies of all time, A Fish Called Wanda.
You English, you think you're so superior, don't you? Well, you're the filth of the planet. A bunch of pompous, badly dressed, poverty-stricken, sexually repressed football hooligans. Goodbye, Archie.
Well, at least we're not irretrievably vulgar.
You know your problem? You don't like winners.
Winners?
Yeah. Winners.
Winners like North Vietnam?
Shut up! We did not lose Vietnam. It was a tie.
I'm telling you, baby, they kicked a little ass there. Boy, they whooped your hide real good.
No, they didn't.
Oh, yes, they did.
Oh, no, they didn't.
Oh, yes, they did.
Oh, no, they didn't. Shut up!
So thank you for watching or listening to this episode of Smarter Podcasting. I really do appreciate it. Remember, follow, subscribe, turn on notifications, do all that good stuff so you never miss an episode. And also, please share this with someone else that you know who has a podcast who needs some help, especially if they need help with YouTube. If you have any questions, let me know. Get in touch with me. There's so many different ways. You know how to do it. And if you're one of these people that listen to the end, thank you very much. Just send me a message saying, hey, I listened to the end. Awesome. Have a good day. Cheers.
Hi, my name is Sal Jeffries. I run the Mindset, Mood and Movement podcasts. I've been working with Neil at 7 Million Bikes for the whole of this year, literally from the start of my podcast to date. And I want to say a couple of things. So when we record the podcast, sometimes there are things that I need tweaking. There could be edits or clips. It's really simple. I give those instructions to Neil, he gets it sorted. There's sometimes a sound level differences between the guest mic and mine. Again, that's all sorted so the outcome is a really balanced sound. And also if there are issues with voice, little kind of sound interruptions, all those things that can distract a listener, Neil knows exactly what to do, cleans it up. The end result, highly professional, beautiful sounding podcast without distraction. That's exactly what I want. I know my listeners do. So if you're interested in having that level of podcast and that kind of quality, Neil is a great guy and I highly recommend you speak to him.